We are excited to be here this morning. I have one of my favorite artists to share with you today. And sorry, we're a few minutes late, but we're just glad to be here and have some cool art techniques to learn today. Learn a little bit more about value and shading. But first, our artist. And we're a little sad because we had to close our book and stop reading to turn the video on. So forgive us some grumpy faces. Maybe a smile, please. All right. I guess I will smile. Okay, so our artist is Canadian, perhaps the most successful, famous Canadian artist. We are not in the US taught about him and his group of seven really at all. But in Canada, you would be very familiar with this artist and his friends because they set about to develop a Canadian painting style, to stop painting like Europeans, like everyone else was doing, those impressionists, stop painting like them and create a Canadian painting language that looked Canadian, that had their pride in their country and their people, and was distinctly Canadian. So, but they have been, people outside of Canada have since come to recognize them and really appreciate them. Actually, Steve Martin is a huge fan of this artist and has curated or put on multiple museum shows so that more Americans can come to appreciate our artist today. No, not Steve Byrne, not my dad. Steve Martin, a little bit more well-known. But while he is very, very funny, is very serious about art and this artist in particular. So early on, I actually need the computers a little bit closer. It's very hard I don't know what to do. Early on, he did paint images that showed, life, people interacting with their environment, their houses. There were some people in them and stuff. But look at that snow and the way he shows the light and the shadow. Isn't that amazing? Just the softness to it. Okay, go ahead and look at your book. The way he showed light, again, kind of depicting a man-made element in nature. But that light, I love it so much. And moving forward, then he and his group of seven started to travel around Canada quite a bit more. And being kind of elite city folk, they started to camp out and create art out in the wilderness and everything. And then we get these glorious landscapes. Again, with such great light. Whew. Such great light and shadow, give us a real feeling of the place, even though it's not super realistically rendered. Often, there aren't even really live things in it, like this dead tree. But look at the glory of the landscape around it. This was a central image in Steve Martin's exhibit. He said to him, it looks like it should be the image representing Canada, and that there's a spirituality to it. Our artist was from a very, very wealthy, well-to-do family, so he was able to focus completely on his art because he didn't have to worry about paying bills and stuff like that. He spent some time over in Europe learning, and then came home and, like I said, wanted to create a Canadian art style that wasn't influenced by the Europeans. But he brought with him a spirituality that he had discovered over there in Europe, and he really wanted to infuse it into his art, and felt like art was kind of a higher way almost. And so he was a contradiction that he was this wealthy, well-respected member of society that, went to the right parties and this or that and the right schools, and at the same time really wanted to be seen as this rebel who was out creating art in the wilderness. It's just amazing. Look at that light. Yeah, I could just say that again and again. Look at that light. Look at that light. Just love his use of light. Excellent. Yeah. So because it's, the north, there's lots of barren landscapes with ice. Then there's these beautiful forest scenes, but they're still, had dead trees amongst them. But again, look at the bright color in the foreground and the light in the background. I was not familiar with this artist in my art education years or even early in my painting career. But as I started to post paintings, pictures of my paintings, people said, oh, it reminds me of this artist and his group, who I then had to look up and realized, oh my gosh, I love them so much. I wish that I lived 100 years ago in Canada and had been friends with all of them. So anyway, anybody know who our artist of the day is? It is Mr. Lawren Harris, born in 1885 and died in 1970 in Canada. Again, worked hard at developing a Canadian painting style and part of the group of 7. Now, it was a group of 7, though it sometimes had up to 10 members. So, 7 was kind of an arbitrary number. I love that it was the group of 7, but like I said, sometimes there were 10, sometimes there were more. When they had group art shows, sometimes they invited other people like Emily Carr, who was a close friend of Lawren Harris. He really, really encouraged her. We talked about Emily Carr a few weeks ago. And while there were no women who were officially part of the group of 7, she often exhibited with them. So Lawren Harris said, art is long, life is short. And just really found art to be a higher way, a spiritual connection that he couldn't otherwise. So, any questions about Lawren Harris? I think he's as fabulous as I just love him. So, for our art project today, we are going to draw an iceberg. Do you not have an iceberg lying around your house or right outside your front window? Yeah, we don't either. So, we built an iceberg. Ta-da! Ta-da! Yeah, thank you. We're a little underwhelmed this morning. Yes, sure. Pull the chair away. So the trick, though, is an iceberg is white. It's white. There's not a lot of other colors on it. Are there? It's snow. On it. But are there other colors? What about the reflection of the blue sky on it? What about if there's some yellow snow on it? I would stay away from the yellow snow.
What if there's some purple?
What if there's some purple stain on our sheet? But definitely, look here at how blue the shadows are in this, because they are reflecting the blue of the sky. We often think of shadows as being black, but they are really, really not black. They tend to reflect the color of the sky. So depends on how dramatic your lighting is and how blue your sky is. But they're going to be blue. As they're farther away, they might be a little bit more purple, depending on the color they're on top of. With this being on top of white, and we're indoors, we don't have any blue sky reflecting. Actually, that wouldn't help if we were outdoors. There's no blue sky outdoors either today. But look at where the light hits, how bright it is, and then how dark it gets here in some of the edges. So we're going to remember our value scale. Do you remember what a value scale was? We talked about it a little bit ago. Value scale is
like when you draw, you put a big long rectangle and put it and make it so there's 10 boxes and then shade in each one so the darkest and the first is the lightest.
Yes. So if you weren't with us the other day when we did value scales, is a way to practice drawing value. And value refers to how light or how dark something is. So we'd start with this one being white, that rectangle. And our last rectangle would be as black as we could get it.
You can even use charcoal.
You can even use charcoal. She likes charcoal. So then we need our scale to go from white to this black in gradual stair steps, trying to make the difference between the darkness of the value to be kind of equal. So a gradual change. This is a good challenge to do. If you didn't do it with us before, go ahead and try and draw a value. You're going to just be pushing a little bit harder in each rectangle as you go along. If you push too hard too fast, you get too dark too fast, and then your steps at the end aren't going to be big enough steps. Let's see, it's just getting a little bit darker each time. Go ahead and do that if you didn't do it before with us. And then either pause the video and draw our fabulous iceberg, or create an iceberg of your own. It's fun. And go ahead and draw it. Try and do the outline of the shape. He's got very strong shapes here in his icebergs, as you can see there. So go ahead and draw the outline of it, and then draw the lines in here and add your shading. And you're shading just by pushing harder and gradually getting lighter with the pressure you put on your pencil. You can do this with color. You can do it just with black and white to really focus on the value. Sometimes when we add color, we get distracted and stop thinking about value and color, and then all of our colors end up the same value. It gets a little complicated. So sometimes it's easier just to keep it black and white when you're thinking about value. But if you're using color and you're like, wait, I don't know, because yellow is such a lighter color than blue. What's the value? Squint your eyes. Squint your eyes at your picture, and it helps you see where your darks are and where your lights are. Another way would be to take a photocopy of it, to take a copy of it in black and white, and the difference between your colors, or really your values. Those are different ways to help you not get lost in value once you start with color. But if you want to keep your iceberg simple, just do it black and white. Do the general outline, and then go ahead and add shading for your darker spots. You could play around with your lighting too. Look at how much it changes depending on where we put the light. It's going to dramatically affect how you shade your iceberg. You might even want to divide your paper into half or into fourths and draw it in 2 or 4 different ways, just changing the source of light. Look at how cool that is. How much that changes. Exactly. Every time you put the light in a different place, the shadow changes in a different way. And how far away your light is, how strong your light is, that is all going to affect that. So for younger students, maybe just even play around with this. Build an iceberg, bring a light next to it, and observe, discover how those lights and shadows change as you move your light away. And then if you want to draw it, get out your paper and go ahead and draw that as your art challenge for the day. So thank you for joining us. Hope that you like Lawren Harris as much as I do, because I wish I could see some of his paintings in person one of these days. Again, thanks for joining us. Hope you have a fabulous day. Happy arting.